Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I think this is a headphone talk, so you might need the headphones on. Welcome today to my talk on the Great AI Giveaway. But first of all, we've got to go back in time a bit. Now, my grandfather used to work down the coal mine, or the pit, as we call it. And to do that, you had to get up really early in the morning. So you had to be at work for about 3 a.m., 14, 15-hour days. And they employed this person. Now, the job title was a knocker-upper. And exactly as the name suggests, you can probably guess, their job was to get a big, long stick. It happened in a lot of northern towns. Get a big, long stick, go to the top of the window where the person was sleeping, tap on the window, and they'd basically keep tapping on it until the person came to the window and said that they was ready to get up. Now, it's only about 50 years ago this job still existed. I won't ask for a show of hands because we can't do it, but have a think in your head what might have replaced this job. So some of you may have guessed it, the alarm clock, but it was the modern day alarm clock that you could actually plug in, because that was the first time that reliability and affordability came into the market. Now, no one told the previous person that they was going to lose the job to alarms, be worried about alarms coming. And this kind of really helped them because obviously they could get up in the morning and it made it much more efficient. But the last person kind of had to find a new job. But just like AI, we've always gone a bit crazy with new technology. This is probably the most British example I've ever seen of the next generation of the alarm clock. Not only woke you up in the morning, but it also made you a nice cup of tea. Just like some of the AI initiatives, it didn't really work. I think you can still get them on eBay. They cost quite a lot of money. But it gives you an example of how we've always gone through different technological stages and sometimes gone a bit too far with them. Let's go back a bit further then. I feel like with the headphones on, you probably have that rewind music or something would be useful. But this was pre-industrial revolution. So you had a worker here, and it was quite a skilled role at the time, where you'd have a spindle of wool, and their job was to use the wheel to turn it into a yarn of wool, and the yarns would be sold for different purposes, export and also imported as well. Now, the next thing to replace this was the spinning jenny. Now, you can see straight away from that, it took one person to produce around 300 yarns of wool. And what happened with this is the businesses saw this as a massive opportunity, and they didn't replace the jobs. They trained the previous people to be able to do this role and actually increased exports and output, which is a lot of the opportunities that we've got with AI. So the first failure that we did, and there'll be 7 failures throughout this talk, is that we told everyone that they're going to lose the jobs, and we keep telling everyone that, and it's causing a lot of problems. So at this point, I'm quickly going to introduce who I am, for those of you that don't know. My name's Darren Wood, and I've got 15 years experience in product and data roles up to board level. These are some of the companies I've worked at and currently working at the BBC. This is where I'm from. Some other famous people-ish you may know from Bolton as well. And I try and get this in every data talk I do. This is a Bolton delicacy. It's actually now available nationwide. So Cars Pasties actually sell these. It's a bread roll, or a balm as we call it, with a pasty in the middle. Really, really cheap, lots and lots of calories, ideal. So do go and try one of them if you get a chance. The second thing we did then, and I'll talk through this throughout my talk, is we give away AI for free. And lots of people in this room will know how expensive AI is to generate a use case. But one of the best examples we can look at who've done a lot of this is OpenAI. So we can see from information that they've made public, they're making around 5 billion in losses last year. They've got around 700 million weekly active users, which is a massive amount of penetration into the market. But we can see that they've only got 5 million people paying for business users. And we don't quite know how many people are paying for subscriptions, but we know it's fairly small in comparison to the ones where it's being given away for free. And where they're getting that money from, they get it from investment. So we can see at the bottom, 8.3 billion for investors. So they're going through that stage at the minute. And why this starts to cause a problem, which I'll talk about, is usually as you get technological advances, it goes through this phase pretty slowly from enthusiasts to visionaries, and the rest of the market can catch up and try to work out where to employ the technology. But this has gone straight to the late majority, so most of our parents, everybody we speak to is using some form of AI in the day-to-day lives. And I'll talk about why that makes it hard for us throughout the talk. The second failure we did then is we forgot about customer value. So, but to do that, we have to explain what is customer value. Now, customer value is the benefits minus the cost. So a consumer will do a psychological calculation over the benefits that they get from something, and then they'll look at how much it costs and make a psychological calculation of whether they want to pay for that item or not. And for us, when we're introducing an AI business case, we can only really do one of two things. The one on the left, as the cost of the business goes up, the cost of the customer goes up, and we generate revenue from it. Or we do the one on the right-hand side where the cost of the business goes up, we need to make savings and we remove overheads. And that's what you hear a lot of talk about in the market, removing overheads. Now, in 15 years, I've seen a number of these business cases, not with AI, but just generally technological projects, get through, but I've almost seen none of them work. They start off for the first few years where they replace jobs, but more often than not, those jobs are replaced with new looking after that new technology, or they're replaced somewhere else in the business. So look at any big company on LinkedIn, they've always got either 2,000 people, 3,000 or 10,000, and they always stay around that amount. Now, to help with this, we have to look at costing strategies. So there's 4 different ways kind of we can make money from AI and other ways. There's freemium, where we have no cost to the end user. Integrated, where we put the cost into existing products and do kind of an annual price increase. Subscription, where we do a monthly cost, or we do like an add-on where you pay extra for subs, and it's a simple ROI calculation. And as I talked about in the first few slides, just keep your mind on this bit as we go through, that future plan to charge, because that is going to be really, really important for the rest of us in the market. The 4th failure then is that we treated AI as the product and not as a product, and I'll talk through that. So to do this, we're going to talk about Kano. Now, any of you that's into rap music, you might think of this Kano, but actually who I'm going to talk about is this Kano. So he's a professor, came about in the 1980s, and he came up with this really good way of classifying customer preferences into 5 categories. And I think it's really good whether we're looking at AI, whether you've got tables in your business, dashboards, whatever you're doing, it's a really good way of classifying it. So to do that, I want you to imagine for a minute that you're working at a hotel and you're building the ideal hotel experience. A lot of you probably stayed in hotels last night. So you've got to think of the minimum things that someone expects when they come into a hotel. So obviously you need a bed, you need a light, you need curtains to keep out the light, you need covers, pillows, that type of things. And that just about meets the minimum expectations. Then when you speak to people about what they actually want to satisfy the needs, this is an example of hotels.com said, to make your experience better, what do you actually want? And there's lots of things. Free Wi-Fi, they want a restaurant, on-site parking, bars, air conditioning, and the list kind of goes on to increase to that satisfaction amount. Then there's things in the room that are unimportant. So if you stayed in a hotel last night, you may have seen a telephone in there. We don't really need a telephone in there anymore. It takes up room in the hotel room. We've all got mobile phones. As long as we've got the reception's contact number somewhere on a sheet of paper, we don't need it. We've actually come full circle, and we now don't need an alarm clock in the hotel room because we've got our mobile phones. There's not many of these left, but Corby trouser presses, some hotels still have them things in. But they're unimportant things that you don't need in there anymore. Then there's undesired things. So when you went to your hotel, you may have had the experience where you go to check in with the nice flashy key card and it doesn't work. You have to go back to the hotel reception and speak to them about it. Really, really frustrating. Or you may have had a shower, water goes all over the floor and you have to mop it up with a tissue. All examples of undesired experiences that happen. Then we go up to what's called the delighting part. Now I can see a few people smiling at this. It's not my idea of a delight because I've not got any pets. But if you've got a pet, this might be a real delight for you. This is an actual real-life example of a hotel in Portland where you go away with your partner and you have all the massages and things like that. But you can also take your pet with you and you get pet beds, food, water, indulgent treats, pet groomers, acupuncturists, and that VIP treatment for your pet. And this is considered a delighting factor. Now, I thought this was a really good quote that Hotels.com came out with. And people are using this delighting stage to enhance guest satisfaction, to differentiate in a competitive market, and tapping into unique services that go beyond. And I think this is very pertinent to how we should be treating AI. So when I talked about Delighter then, and we'll go on to it in more detail soon, but when you start to do that discovery, these are the kind of things that you should start to get as feedback. So when you start to introduce this, someone should tell you this particular use case hasn't been done before. You'll see examples of when you do the prototype, the consumer that you're doing it with visibly smiles. So again, it could be a table, a dashboard, it could be a feature that you're bringing into an existing product. I've had this before where someone actually swears when they see it because it's that revolutionary. And when you speak to people, they dream of how they could use it. And during the ideation stage, only super optimistic developers think it's possible. We've got a slight tech issue, but we'll carry on. And people start contacting you by word of mouth. And top industry analysts are not writing about it. So that starts to get you to think about when you've got a prototype and you're putting it out to somebody, those are the kind of things that you should start to get back. And this was the model that he came up with. Essentially, if you've got delighters and satisfiers as part of your product or your table or dashboard, people will generally be more satisfied with it than if you're just meeting the minimum expectations. And this is how I've done it with teams in the past. So I'll show you on the next slide how you can do it. But you can get, again, it can be a table and you're comparing two tables, why is one good versus not. You compare products, why is a good product versus not, or even dashboards. And you can get the features that's on that table or dashboard and start to plot them against this. And what you'll see really quickly is that things that are really, really good hit the minimum grade every time. They satisfy those minimum things that the consumer expects. And also, things that start off at the top will move down that scale. So they may start off as a satisfier like an alarm clock in your room, but over time you need to remove it, the same as a dashboard or a table or that AI feature you've just moved into. And it'll move it to unimportant and undesired. And your job as a data product manager or whatever your role is to make sure these are constantly removed from your product or offering. You concentrate on this and you're constantly putting in satisfiers and delighters. Now, the big issue that we've got with AI is that we should be aiming for up here in that delighting phase, but most of it's currently here. There's a lot of tools out there like OpenAI that are giving it away for free, and that's causing a lot of issues when we try and introduce a use case. And that is a big failure. Most of the things that we're doing don't delight our customers. And that's partly because they're in this bit, the freemium option. Big businesses are giving away these features for free, but again, keep in mind on that future plan to charge bit. And that causes an issue because the big businesses are giving away lots and lots of benefits and not charging anything for it. So when we come to try and get a cost from them or to try and raise revenue for it, they don't want to pay it because they're so used to getting these delighters for free. But I think this is a really important point because in the next few years, those investors are going to start to go away. Those companies are going to start to go public. They're going to have to start charging for what they're offering. And at that point, the things that we're doing today that failed because the consumer didn't see the value in it may not fail tomorrow. But what we need to do is make sure that those features are delighting our customers. So to do that, we have to speak to our customers. And the big importance of that is finding customer problems. So not just introducing AI for AI's sake, but really finding out what our customers are struggling to do. Again, it could be a dashboard, it could be a table, it could be introducing AI to one of your products that you've got. And what AI works really well with is multiple problems. So gathering up multiple problems that people are facing and trying to solve them. Again, ideating with your teams, making sure you've got a multidisciplinary team that you can try to understand that problem set and ideate how you might do that challenge. And then prototype. It doesn't matter what you're building, there's a way to get a prototype out there using dummy data, or there was someone around here yesterday going out with a prototype that they printed out, to try and get that feedback from the consumer. And again, make sure you speak to your customers again and again as you go through that prototype, because you might need to go back through that ideation process to try and make sure you hit that delighter. And if you don't get that feedback that it's a delighter from your customers, you can forget about it. It's not going to land in the market, and people aren't going to pay for it. And it's going to cost you, even if you do introduce it, it's going to cost your business a lot of money. So let's have a look then at some AI use cases. Now, this is a little bit cheesy, and it's based on Newton's law of motion. It's from one of my favorite films, The Matrix. And Meridian comes along, and he's not in for that long, but he talks about this bit: action and reaction, cause and effect. And I don't think it's been ever more pertinent to AI and the technological effect that it can have on this. And let me explain what I mean. So we forgot that when we introduce an AI use case, it usually has two sides. And depending on the business topologies, how you set up internally, you might not have the opportunity to think about the other side. And I'll show some of the issues it can create. So this is kind of a real life example that many classified websites have done. And I've stripped away any names or anything like that and created kind of the flow on the right myself. And the problem and the goal from the analyst is that the data shows that it takes around 10 minutes to create an advert if the user already has images, and that's causing a large dropout. So the business set the goal of using AI to speed up that process so it takes seconds rather than minutes. And a lot of you may have been through a journey very similar. You upload your photos to it, it automatically creates a title, creates a description, and creates a price. You click next, it goes online, you walk away. From this side, it's really, really, really good. That large dropout has gone away. We've got lots and lots of people adding different things on now, and it looks good. But on the other side, it causes a real problem. And this is kind of unintended. Maybe the team didn't do the full analysis, I don't know. But buyers now have a very, very poor buying experiences. The titles are very, very similar, or all the same in some cases. The descriptions are very, very similar. And the pricing is all a bit weird. It's like 0.75p and things like that. And when you speak to consumers, what they really, really like is when they click into it, understanding that individual story of that item. So although AI made the other side really, really good, it caused a problem on this side, and we need to think about both sides of the use case. The seventh failure then is that humans are quite irrational, deeply psychological. So let's have a look at another example again. And there was a company that just started working on this before the pandemic, got a lot of investors, and they've now gone out of business after spending a lot of investor money. And it focused on an industry which I used to work in, which is automotive. Any of you that's bought a car, find the process, pretty time consuming. It can take around 8 to 12 weeks to find the car that you want. And when you speak to consumers, they say it's really frustrating, time consuming, they want it to be made simpler. So the goal here then from the business is to use AI and some agentic AI, so we can ask some basic questions and the agentic can go away and do some various search mechanisms. And to do that up front, it comes back to the user to infer different things, say whether things are good or bad, and continue to move on. So that process can happen in a few hours, and the car arrives at your house the next day. So again, you probably think this is a good thing to do, and the consumer's like, yeah, this sounds really good. But when you actually speak to them on the other side, you get this kind of reaction. It feels really scary to people. And what they actually talk about is they want to know during that process that they've made the right decision and that they've got value for money from it. So it takes 8 to 12 weeks. We've reduced it to like 1 or 2 hours and it arriving the next day. But humans actually want some kind of time in between, probably a few weeks, where they feel like they've made the right decision. So AI gives us the opportunity to speed up a lot of these processes really fast. But humans on the other side of it aren't necessarily ready for it, or maybe ever ready for it. And when you go through this ideation process, you need to think about these psychological impacts and how you can then change the workflows so that it gives them that opportunity to show that they got value for money, made the right decision, and those kind of things. So just going kind of what we've covered then. To generate value from AI, there's 4 big parts to it. Discover, ideate, validate, MVP. We need to make sure that we're speaking to our customers, and AI works in a really well when we find multiple problems and we understand psychological limitations of what we're going to input, but deeply understand that user journey and what the customer's expecting. When we ideate, we should make sure that it's multidisciplined, but also multi-problems that are coming through. But really think about those delighters. If it's not a delighter, it's probably not going to have the impact or generate the value that you want. Create prototypes and start small and simple, and make sure you're going through this feedback loop multiple times. And then when you get into that MVP stage, think about lean and quick, and prioritize good. It doesn't have to be perfect, just prioritizing good and getting it out into the market. Okay, we've got about 10 minutes left, and it wouldn't be a presentation from me unless we had a brief talk on data products. So I thought this year I'd talk about the trends that I've seen in 2025. This is the kind of typical example of data mesh when they brought out that. Book, source line, consumer aligned, analysts being able to access both of these, dashboards and tools on the outside and data coming in. That middle circle bit all going through governance and legal, etc. The first trend that I've seen that some people in this room may do as well is a data product manager role, which focuses on this right-hand side, which is generating value for the business. So this may be in the form of dashboards being given to a domain and generating value. Now, I think that's really, really good, and it's worked well where a lot of businesses have got a lot of value from data by generating these dashboards. But I do worry about the bit in the middle, and to make sure that someone in the business is making sure that people are concentrating as well on the data storage, making sure those tables are really well defined, really well broken down, and taking some of that concepts of data products into it. The second trend that I've seen is kind of like somewhere between data mesh and medallion, where you've brought the data in, you've got this bronze, silver, and gold layer, and you only give people access to this gold layer to analysts, dashboards, and tools. It works really well for like really large businesses where you create standardized metrics and definitions of things. But I think from speaking to different people, what I've found is that the analysts a lot of the time need access to that underlying data. Once they've got a metric out that might be approved, it's then going into that underlying data to actually understand that user journey. So making sure that people have got access to those silver and bronze layers is important. Now, I've been thinking more and more about this idea. So this might seem a little bit busy at first, but the main focus on this is the failure rate that I've seen with those consumer-aligned data products. So the book talks a lot about that one-to-one relationship between a consumer-aligned data product and dashboard or dashboards or a tool or a person that's doing something with it. And what I've seen is that tools go through a procurement stage. It may be a POV that they're doing, a proof of concept. And tools and dashboards go away quite often. We all see kind of use cases that come through that maybe shouldn't have got through. And to build a consumer-aligned data product takes a long time. And if they constantly fail, as I've seen in a number of businesses speaking to people, that creates a big problem for the business and trying to talk to senior stakeholders about why all this investment isn't paying off. But at the bottom end of that, the data that's coming into the business, so think tracking, strategies, different tools that people are using, a lot of the time can be operational, doesn't change that much. So this stays quite stable. And therefore, the source line data product stays quite stable. They might be improved over time, but they don't fail in the same way that the consumer line data products fail. And what I've been thinking about more and more is, for want of a better name, I've called it centralized data products. But the idea is here, you're looking at your business strategy over the next 3 to 5 years and really thinking about those centralized data products that you can build that may be improved over time, but will continue to satisfy lots and lots of use cases over that 5-year period. And when I've spoke about it, it seems to be around, if you split it up into, I don't know, somewhere between 5 domains across your business, and each domain's got between 5 and 6 of these centralized data products, what happens then is that consumer line data product, if a use case comes through, it's simply a matter of an engineer or an analyst, depending on the use case, to put a bunch of those consumer line data, the central data products together to create that consumer line data product, which is a pretty fast process compared to all this bit. So that means if it does fail, it doesn't matter as much, and this bit stays around for a long, long time, but can be improved over time, depending on these changing. The other thing that I've seen is this data product lifecycle part of it, and the fact that the data product should go through an introduction phase, growth, maturity, and decline. And I think we've seen that data teams are really good at this bit in introducing new data products, not so good at the growth bit a lot of the time. Once you've got past that first use case, how do you get more people to do it and introduce more use cases to build that data product up? And there's definitely not enough of this bit at the end, the decline of a data product, and the people within your business noticing that decline and either improving it or retiring that product altogether, so you keep this suite of data products in the middle. So there's 7 failings then that I've talked through. The failure 1 is that we told everyone that they're going to lose the jobs, and that's made it really, really difficult when we try and talk about value of AI. Big businesses are giving away AI for free, and that's created a real problem for the rest of us who are really trying to generate value. And we forgot about that customer value calculation and how consumers start to calculate that in the mind. And we also treated AI as the product and not as a product. How can you get it into your dashboards, tables, product in a way that satisfies that delighting thing? The 5th failure then is most use cases today don't delight your customers. They're going into that minimum part, and then they're quickly going into unsatisfied, and you're having to take it out because you can't generate the revenue. We also forgot that most use cases have 2 sides. Again, it may be your team's topologies of how your business is set up, but that is going to be really, really important. And also the fact that humans are a bit irrational, so you need to really understand the psychology of what they want from it. A quick summary then of everything that we've talked through. I do think data products are still the best way to generate value, but many businesses are doing it differently, and you just need to be comfortable with the way that your business is doing it and your role as well. Big companies are using that freemium model, but I believe that will start to change in the next few years, and when that changes, because freemium starts to go away, plans start to have less prompts, and people don't get access to that new models as we're already starting to see, that's going to be a big, big turning point of when consumers start rethinking value. And that gives us an opportunity, if we've done all that ideation, to start to really delight consumers with AI. But we need to deeply understand those customer problems and think about that effect and reaction of every use case that we bring in. And again, make sure that you're emphasizing idea in testing over and over again. And if you're going through that process and your AI use case doesn't delight your customers, then you're not going to generate real value from it. That's the end of my talk then. I'll take the headset off soon and I'll be at the front for a few minutes before the end. That's my cheesy picture that's on LinkedIn of when we had a tour around the BBC studios. But do feel free to add me on LinkedIn. I post a lot of content on there, but I also like to talk to people as well. So if you've got problems that you're facing in your business, I'm more than happy to have sessions with you and talk through it. But thanks very much, everyone.